Welcome everybody, hope you're doing well. Welcome back to another exciting review and unboxing here on the channel. Today we're taking a look at a pair of Rio Grande SD40T-2s in ScaleTrains' Rivet Counter most recent release. Very excited to show these off today. Before we get into it, do me a favor and subscribe if you're new, or if you find yourself coming back anyways. Helps me to make a couple dollars, so I really appreciate it. Thank you so much. Like the video if you enjoyed as well, and drop me a comment if you found these interesting or have any questions. Love chatting with you guys. Let's go ahead and get started. I have one of each of the Rio Grande versions in this release. On the right, the early version as delivered, which is approximately 1970s to mid-1980s era, and on the left, as it calls out, late 80s to early 1990s with PTC, which refers to positive traction control, as opposed to the PTC we use today in Class 1 railroads, positive train control. So just a little difference there. If you see that called out, that's what that refers to. But of course, we'll go ahead and compare the differences on these two units, but in terms of unboxing, the experience is the same, so I've decided to choose the late version with PTC to unbox. These are my first SD40T-2s, my first tunnel motors with DCC and Sound. Give you a quick look at the box here, pretty standard stuff, calls out the name there, nothing on the rear. And on the reverse side, the full list of features that we'll take a look at. Here is our product manual, some nice information in there. I'll give you a quick look at the DCC and Sound function chart for reference that we'll go over during the demo portion of the review. And pretty standard ScaleTrains foam around the clamshell on this unit. Here's a look at that. Nice foam surrounding it. You have some soft plastic on the top and as well in the cradle as well. Sometimes those chuck immobilizers come with it, so you just pop those off. And this handrail foam is relatively easy to remove. And here is a quick spin of the late version with PTC before we go ahead and take a look at the details. I purchased both of these units on pre-order from Lombard Hobbies. Was very excited to see them finally release, and each of these units was $300. Let's go ahead and take a look at the details. Alright, starting with the front of the 5397, the unit with PTC. Going top down, all of the lights on this unit are LED and everything in this run. We got lit number boards as well as the high mounted headlight up top. Nice separately applied metal windshield wipers across the board on all four front windows. We've got the sand filler hatch and class lights up front. These are three colors, white, red, and green. And in the center of the hood on this unit, in this black box, is the gyro light on this unit. The other one has a Mars light, so we'll take a look at those differences as well. Coming down, we have a treaded walkway, some nice plastic stanchions all across the model for the railings. We have a drop step in the front that does not move, so don't try to move that one. We got the ScaleTrains metal coupler with a very nice orange plow and some orange grab irons on either side, with black plastic MU hoses and trainline hoses with silver tipped ends. Onto the conductor side up in the front. The steps here are the tall style, as ScaleTrains call it, and they are see-through etched metal. Looks really nice. We got the little F for front over here and a brake wheel on the short hood. This model has the 88-inch short hood. That's the dimension from the front of the cab here out to the end of the hood. And the other Rio Grande version is the 81, so just slightly shorter, but not very noticeable in person really. We have sunshades above the cab here with a wind deflector that's folded down. The windows do slide. Unfortunately, my rear window was a little bit stuck, so the fake glass is a little bit marked up from me trying to move it over, so just be careful of that. And I want to call your attention to the PTC feature on this locomotive. Each of these wheels has a little wire going upwards. That is the wheel slip recorder. There's all three on this side of the locomotive in the front, and on the engineer side, all three of the rear axles have that PTC pickup. You'll also notice that the wheels have this sort of greenish bracket around them. That's a little different with this PTC unit. I think it looks really sharp. In the original ScaleTrains product artwork, it wasn't this green. It's sort of a seafoam green. It looks really good, but it's just a little bit different from what I was expecting. And moving down the rest of the conductor side of the locomotive, past the intake housing here on the left that you saw, you got the dynamic brake overhang and not a lot of assorted stickers or printing on the side of the locomotive, besides of course the nice billboard lettering with some small writing by that step in orange that you see on the walkway. We do have the McCarty type re-railer on each side of the locomotive. On the conductor side, it's located in the rear. And this printing calls out that it is a Denver and Rio Grande Trust locomotive, little ownership on there. Some of the Southern Pacific units also have that as well. It's a nice feature, but it's almost impossible to pick up on camera as the printing looks good, but it's just hard to pick up. And of course, the main spotting feature of the tunnel motors, the T's in the name, is this fancy intake section in the rear. Both sides have etched metal grates that are completely see-through. You can see my pointer in the back, and that entire compartment is open. It looks really nice, and ScaleTrains is the only manufacturer to get it completely open, so that's eventually why I went with these units over maybe an athearn unit that has just a little bit of drivetrain showing. So it's cool that they were able to modify the drivetrain for this locomotive to make it work. Here is a quick shot. I'll just lift it up so you can see completely into this. It is black, so it's hard to see any detail, but you'll notice that there aren't any details in there, which is accurate. So that looks really nice, and good job for ScaleTrains' engineers to make that happen. Onto the rear of the locomotive. Going top down, we have the sand filler hash up top with a very small locomotive number just below, and the headlight, which is directional. We have class lights on the rear as well. They're slightly angled out, and they do mirror the same that's on the front of the locomotive, whatever you have selected. We've got some nice grab irons running up and down. Those are metal wire. Same plastic stanchions in the rear with white accents on the sides around the ladders. And ScaleTrains metal coupler with the same MU hose package as the front of the locomotive. Onto the engineer's rear of the locomotive. You'll see we've got those PTC wheel slip detectors on the rear axles on this side. These cables running up just right here. The step wells on the rear are completely vertical because of the extension of the tunnel motor radiator housing. That means there's not much space in the rear of the locomotive. You'll see a couple warning labels around the radiator section with the road number in the rear as well. It looks really nice here. There's another shot from this side of that opening for the radiator. And moving down a little bit farther, we've got another McCarty type rear rail frog here. You see this nice fuel tank detail. There's not any markings on that. We got the air tank just above it right there. We have a nice label just in the G of Grand there, talking about the fire extinguisher location just below it as well. Looks real nice in that spot. And finally, up to the engineer's front of the locomotive, we have the speed recorder on the unit right here on this third axle. Looks very similar to the wheel slip detectors on the other wheels, but you'll notice that we don't have that on these other axles up in front. No rotating bearing caps on this model because they're all covered up. You can see into the cab a little bit. I've positioned the windows fully open. That's the chair right here and the control stand in black plastic. The rear wall is a sort of modeling cabinets. That's in a lighter gray plastic as well. And you can see up front how far this gyro light protrudes out from the nose, that black box there. Moving to the top of the unit, you'll notice we got the horn and Sinclair antenna on top of the cab with a couple grab irons on the nose. You also see around the step wells, we have the orange marking outlining that. That looks nice. And you might be able to pick up the treaded walkway across the unit as well. Sliding back towards the rear, there's our dynamic brake location. Those are etched metal grates on top of the fans, 48-inch fans on this unit. And in the rear, we have etched metal on top of the radiator exhaust as well, with a couple grab irons on the rear that go across, as well as one down the length of the locomotive in the rear. From this angle, you can get a little bit better view of the marking in the G here, as well as the sight glass in between the Rio and Grand on the long hood. Now for some underbody detail shots. You got the jacking pad here, as well as all of the brake detail around the unit. We got rust-colored wheels as well, which is the key difference between this run and the last one, as the last run was produced almost 5 years ago now. So these units are going fairly quickly, especially the different Southern Pacific variations. You'll also be able to catch some of the underbody piping. There's not a whole lot around the cab here, But if I move towards the rear, you'll see the fuel tank, pretty standard, just a screw holding that on. But this is a truck with the PTC axles facing us, so you can see more of that detail, as well as the truck itself, just a flat bottom with cutouts for the gears themselves. No big deal on that because typically that's just facing the rails. But that's all for 5397, our unit with PTC. So let's go ahead and take a look at 5358. All right, here is 5358, the as delivered or early version. I'll give you a quick spin and then we'll take a look at some of the details here and then do a quick side by side with the unit we just took a look at. All right, looking at the front quarter panel of the unit, you'll see we have a different gyro light in the front. It's actually a Mars light on this unit, and we have a ratchet style handbrake. If I rotate to the side a little bit, you'll see that the Mars light on this unit is a little bit more built into the nose than what we had on 5397. The builder's plate below the cab is also a different color. We got blue and black instead of all gray. And you'll see that we lack all of the PTC additions, so none of these axles have those wheel slip recorders on them. And additionally, up at the front, the steps have black railings on each side, and the steps themselves are completely black with no white accents. Onto the long hood, we've got the ACI tags on each side on the handrail stanchions, with a straddle type re-railer in the rear on this side, as well as on the other side of the locomotive. And that same tag of ownership is just outlined in black on this unit instead of being printed on the orange stripe. The rear of these units is almost exactly the same. The only difference is we have a little housing for all the MU hoses to go into on the rear of this unit. And just a wide shot of the engineer side. There's that ACI label on this side as well, and that same straddle re-railer. We still have the speed recorder on the third axle from the front, but that's the only sort of equipment coming up to the locomotive from the wheels on this model. As for the underside, we still have a lot of detail. Here is the front truck of the engineer side. You'll notice that even the axles that don't have the PTC don't have those green brackets. Instead, they are just standard black. And we'll move down again and just show you the rear of the locomotive without PTC. Let's do a quick side-by-side so I can show you some more differences between the two. All right, and now for some quick comparisons between the two units. We have the PTC model on the left and the early version on the right. Up top, the headlight housings are in different colors. We got black versus orange. We have the gyro light here on the slightly longer hose of the PTC unit with the Mars light on the slightly shorter hose on the right. And we've got openings here in the front pilot that are high on this unit and low on the right. Both of these do have orange colored uncoupling levers that are metal that I did forget to mention, but they both have this same non-movable step in the front. And lining up both of these locomotives side by side, you can just about see the difference in the length of the short hood. We've got the 88-inch hood in the rear on the PTC unit with the gyro light that is mounted on the front of the nose, with the 81-inch hood in the front with the Mars light mounted more in the nose. It's very hard to tell, but there's just a little bit more platform available in front on the as delivered version in front. You'll also see here the difference in the railings, where we got the black in the foreground and the white trim in the rear. Here's a quick overhead shot of the units if you wanted to pick up any other spotting differences. There's not much else different once you get to the long hood besides the ACI tag in the rear and then a couple of slightly different colored markings. But the main difference between these units are the PTC enabled trucks on the later version. We also have a little bit more electronics on the top of the late version with that little white dome as well, but otherwise the top of the units is exactly the same. They do have different horns as well. We got an M3 in the foreground and a P3 in the background, but other than that, pretty similar across the top of the locomotives. But let's go ahead and get these on the track and give you a quick demo of the DCC and sound functions. All right, over here on the test track, all I've done to these locomotives so far is program them to their road numbers. We'll primarily take a look at 5397 in front of us, the late version with PTC, and I'll mirror some of the reverse movements on 5358, as you can see in the back, because the rear of these locomotives is the exact same. Here's a quick reminder of the DCC and sound functions for reference that we'll be going over today. Out of the box, the locomotives are programmed to address 03, and function 8 will start us up. So all we have in startup are the number board lights. There's no ground lights on this locomotive as it's before that time. Function 0 does our directional headlight. So there's our front headlight on 5397 and the rear headlight on 5358. Here's the bell with function 1. That goes for as long as you have that pressed. Function 2 is our horn. Function 3 is our handbrake. And that is a set length. Function 4 are the dynamic brakes, which we'll take a look at when we're moving. Here's function 5, our class lights. Pressing them the first time makes them white, and then toggling off and back on gives us green, and doing it the same again goes to red. It's a little hard to see in the light, but they look pretty good in person, don't worry. Bring us back to white. And I'll do the same on 5358, so you can see that they also reflect in the rear of the model as well. We don't have ditch lights on this model, so function 6 doesn't have a function, but function 7 turns on our gyro light on this locomotive in the front. A little hard to see here, let me get a better angle for you. We'll take a look at 5358's Mars light later on as well. Next up, F8, of course, is our startup and shutdown, so we'll test that one out later. F9 is our drive hold, so that locks your throttle so that it doesn't increase the speed, just ramps up your prime mover. F10 are the independent brakes. There's two different functions here, so there'll be a press and release sound. And release. F11's our radiator fan. It is quite quiet. Might need to bump that volume a little bit. F12 is our headlight dimmer, so that'll dim the high-mounted headlight as well as turn off the gyro light. And toggle that off and see those come back. F13 is our air dryer. F14 is the UDE light function in the manual, but it just turns off the number boards, so I can toggle that back on. Function 15 is the strata light, which we don't have, but it does play a little sort of bell sound when toggled on and off. F16 is the air dryer on shutdown. You can toggle that on or off. F17 is our brake set and release, the automatic version that also doesn't have a sound function in here. F18 is our standing valve, which does function as long as you have that toggled on. F19 is our short air let off. Just the function when you toggle that on. F20, as you've heard coming on frequently, is the compressor, so I'll skip that one. F21 is also labeled as the air dryer. And that does actually has the same function as F13. F22 are the cab doors. F23 is the engine room door. F24 is the reverser center that locks your throttle controls while it's on. F25 opens and closes the shutters. doesn't really have a sound when they're being closed. F26 and 27 are our manual notching, and 28's the setup for that. So let's go ahead and notch up to notch 8 with 26, and then come back down with function 27. And we'll start coming back down. F29 is the load simulator. I don't have functions past 28 on my throttle. And F30 is the automatic brake, and 31 is the sound fader. So let's go ahead and get these locomotives moving and show you them on the move. Here's a quick look at the models on a 22-inch curve. They fit very nicely, no problems there. One thing I did forget to mention is that there is a walkway light at each step on the engineer side, just over there, that comes on with function 8 as well. Alright, here is 5397 moving forward at speed step 1. It's just a little bit jerky, but up at speed step 2 here begins to smooth out, and then it's pretty smooth the rest of the rig going forward. Here's up to speed step 5. And up to 10. And here's 20. And we'll slowly bring it back down. Go ahead and flip to reverse. See that rear headlight come on. I'll go ahead and turn on the dynamic brakes this time as we start moving backwards. So I'll move us to speed step 10 and then turn those on about halfway. That'll bring us back down. And turn off those dynamic brakes. They take a little bit to ramp up, but once they do, they sound really good. When I flip back to forwards, you'll hear the Johnson bar as well. And that's 5397. Let's do a quick shot of 5358. Alright, here is 5358 powered up with the Mars light on the front. The bell and the horn are the same files that can be changed through CVs. Here's a quick blast of the horn. Same sound functions, only main difference in functionality is the inclusion of that Mars light versus the gyro light on the other unit. I'll go ahead and toggle off function 8. We can hear the shutdown on this unit. You'll hear that air dryer going off. And if I go ahead and pull the model off the track, this also includes capacitors. So I'll show you a demo of that life. And there's that. Next, we'll do a quick run by of the units. Alright, I hope you enjoyed that demo. Again, for the purposes here right now, the PTC unit, 5397's on the right, and the as delivered's on the left. There's 3 in each type in this release. Again, this is the first release that they've had in almost 5 years, so I definitely recommend picking them up now that they have the upgraded functions like those rust-colored wheels and just general overall improvements to sound quality and sounds in general, in my opinion. A couple quick technical things. All of the wheels were engaged according to my wheel gauge, so good news there. And across the board, the couplers were just a little bit low, not too big of a deal, that can always be changed, but nothing major incorrect on these locomotives or broken that I can see. Handrails overall pretty good, although they're still plastic, no worries there, still alright. The only small complaint I have is that the conductor side rear window gets a little stuck in the housing. It's nice that they slide, but a little annoying that that one gets stuck. Have to take a very small pliers or screwdriver tip to slide that over just because I can't get my nails in there. But these units look amazing. I've always wanted some tunnel motors, especially this Rio Grande scheme. They're my absolute favorite. And I'm liking these so much that I'm considering buying even 2 more of these in this run, just because then I'll be set for so long. Then I can make helper sets of 4 units like they'd run these out in the wild. But these look amazing. I'm okay with having 2 different eras at once. Can sort of seem like I can run these together in a lash up and then it'll model that transition era between this as delivered and PTC versions, sort of in that mid 80s period. But I think these look great. I may end up just adding white paint to the handrails by the steps on the as delivered version, and then it'll be very, very similar between the 2 units when they're running to tell which one is the more modern of the 2. But overall, I would definitely recommend, again, pick these up from Lombard Hobbies for $300. That's their standard price on these. Same from ScaleTrains. They were sold out from ScaleTrains, and as of March 14th, the pre-orders expired for these. So you might still be able to get lucky and pick some up, but from the ones I've seen, it's just a couple Southern Pacific versions. There's a lot of Southern Pacific versions in this run. If you're looking after maybe a snoot nose version, there's a couple of those, or lobotomized with different headlight packages and UP patches. So lots of options to choose from on the SP front, but only these 2 variations in the Rio Grande, which is okay because I think these are just absolutely gorgeous. But I'll go ahead and wrap up this review here. I think it's pretty obvious that I like these units, definitely recommend. Great sound, great weight, run great, hits all the boxes for me. If you did enjoy this video and you did make it this far, consider subscribing. Really appreciate it. Helps me make a couple dollars, so thank you so much. Like the video if you enjoyed as well, and drop me a comment if you were able to pick some of these up yourself or the Southern Pacific versions. Tell me how you're liking them, or if you have any questions, be happy to answer as best I can. But thank you very much for watching, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.